Greetings, stewards of Gondor, men of Númenor, spies of the enemy, and servants of darkness, and welcome back. I have been expecting you. You have arrived at just the pristine moment. Our scouts have recently uncovered recent information and documents that were seemingly thought lost and burned in the ruin of Orodruin within Mordor. Deducing everything we need to know about Mordor, the black volcanic plain in the southeast of Middle-earth, to the east of Gondor, Ithilien, and the great river Anduin. Mordor was chosen by Sauron, the second preeminent dark presence in the world, as his realm, due to the mountain ranges surrounding it on three sides, creating a natural, almost impenetrable forces against his enemies. Today we will delve into its geography, regions, the significant locations, its formation, its history, its destruction, and the armies and allies that bore within it. Now join us. Adorn yourself in your armor, men of the West, as we delve into the land where the shadows lie. Mordor was protected from three sides by enormous mountain ranges, arranged roughly in a rectangular manner: the arid Lithini, Ash Mountains in the north, and the Ephel Duath, Mountains of Shadow, in the west and south. In the northwest corner of Mordor, the deep valley of Undun was one of the few entrances for large armies. Guarding the entrance was the Black Gate of Mordor. In front of the Black Gate lay Dagorlad, or the Battle Plain. Sauron's main fortress of Barad-dûr sat at the end of the spur of the arid Luthili. To the south of Barad-dûr lay the arid plateau of Gorgoroth and Mount Doom. To the east lay the plain of Ithilien. Mordor's geography was excellent for its defense against enemies. Attacking on all fronts, the nearly unscalable mountains defended Mordor on three sides, while the broken, jagged land of Gorgoth and Nirn would greatly impede any army that managed to break through. Mordor's dry and blasted geography would also be extremely unfriendly to any army by a Uvate on the plains, forcing a withdrawal within days, unless they have stores sufficient for months. The only other paths for armies to cross into Mordor from the west over the Ephel Duath were the Morgul Pass and the path of Cirith Ungol. Isildur originally built the city on Minas Ithil to guard the western end of both passes from any threat from Mordor, but in the Third Age, the population of the city waned, and it was conquered by the Nazgûl. It became the home of the Ringwraiths and was renamed Minas Morgul for many years, and was thereafter a great bastion of evil, ever after the war with Gondor to the west until the end of the War of the Ring. To escape the vigilance of Morgul, to enter Mordor, one would still have to get past the lair of Shelob and the Tower of Cirith Ungol, a feat only Frodo, Baggins, and Samwise Gamgee, led by Gollum, ever accomplished, though not without being waylaid by the giant fearsome spider Shelob, a descendant of Ungoliant, and Frodo being taken prisoner to the Tower of Cirith Ungol by orcs. The southern part of Mordor, called Nirn, was slightly more fertile and watered enough to hold the inland sea of Nirn. Nirn was made somewhat fertile because of the ash ground from Mount Doom left its soil nutrient-rich, thus allowing the dry land farming. To the west of Mordor was the narrow land of Ithilien with the king's city of Osgiliath and the great river Anduin, while directly east of it was Rhuin, and to the south, Khand. The east of Mordor is by far the least mentioned of any of Mordor's geographical notes and descriptions. One might assume that the easiest route to Mount Doom would be for the Fellowship to journey through the unguarded section in the east, which no mountains obstructed. However, it would have been difficult to pass unnoticed, because the many roads running from Mordor to Rhuin were often marched along by Easterlings entering Mordor and patrolling the wards and borders with troops. Many of its regions included Gorgoroth, Lithlad, and Nirn, with the significant places being Barad-dûr, the capital and seat of power for the Dark Lord Sauron, Durthang, Ironmouth, Minas Morgul, the home of the Nazgûl, including the Witch King, the commander of Mordor's armies and Sauron's second-in-command, the Black Gate, Mount Doom, or Orodruin, where Frodo cast the ring and destroyed it, and where many millennia prior Sauron had forged his very important end creation. The Tower of Cirith Ungol. These are just some of the immense strategic locations that Mordor was forged on. Now, let's delve into its history. The Mount Doom was created by Morgoth during the First Age, in an unknown moment of the First Age, perhaps shortly around the War of Wrath, the 40-year-long siege of Angband that eventually caused Morgoth and his uncountable armies of orcs to be defeated. Shelob led the Nan-Gorothotep and settled there with her offspring. Sauron settled in Mordor 1,000 years after the end of the First Age and renamed it the centre of its power for the whole of the Second Age, and again at the end of the Third Age of Middle-earth. In the northwestern corner of this land stood Mount Doom, where Sauron had forged the One Ring. Near Mount Doom stood Sauron's stronghold of Barad-dûr. After this time, Sauron was known as the Dark Lord of Mordor. For 2.5 millennia, Sauron ruled Mordor uninterruptedly and unchallenged. Having wrought the ring, it was from there that he launched an attack upon the Elves of Eregion in the War of the Elves and Sauron. But he was repelled by the men of Númenor. He later opposed Númenor, but such was their military power that his own servants deserted him, and he was captured by the Númenorians and brought to their island kingdom, eventually causing its destruction through treachery and manipulation. Immediately after Númenor's destruction, Sauron returned to Mordor as a spirit and resumed his rule across his servants. Sauron's rule was interrupted again when his efforts to destroy Gondor failed. His forces were driven back, and the last alliance of elves and men formed to oppose him. After the Battle of Dagorland, the army of the last alliance entered Mordor and besieged Barad-dûr for 7 years. Eventually, Sauron came forth and was defeated in the final battle on the slopes of Doom, for about 1600 years afterwards. Mordor was guarded by Gondor in order to prevent evil from returning. The Towers of the Teeth, Durthang, and the Tower of Cirith Ungol were forged by Gondor to watch the major entry points to the Dark Land. Gorgoroth was during this time desolate, with Barad-dûr leveled down to its foundations, unable to be destroyed due to its naturally being tied to the One Ring. However, following the Great Plague in Third Age 1636, the watch on Mordor failed and evil began to creep back in. Sauron eventually used the Wind Riders to distract and weaken Gondor, and the Nazgûl re-entered in the Third Age 1980. They reclaimed Mordor and started to rebuild its might. Minas Ithil was conquered by the Nine Ring Wraiths in the Second Age 2002, and Gondor's abandoned fortresses were occupied by evil creatures. By this time, Sauron returned to Mordor in the Third Age 29 and 42 after his false defeat at Dol Guldur, in the events that took place in the time of Bilbo Baggins' quest to reclaim Erebor along with the company of 13 dwarves. Mordor was too strong to be captured by any military might that was available in Middle-earth at the end of the Third Age, with Sauron declaring himself openly in the Third Age 2951, and Mount Doom burst into flame 3 years later. During the War of the Ring, Sauron gathered all his forces to Mordor. In the north were great garrisons and forges of war, while surrounding the bitter inland sea of Nurnen. To the south lay vast fields of Nurn, tended to by the provision of the armies of the hordes of slaves brought in from the lands to the east and the south. After the Battle of the Pelennor Fields, the army of the west marched to the Black Gate. Sauron set the remaining of his orcs to destroy the men of Gondor and Rohan at the Battle of the Black Gate. Then Frodo Baggins, climbing into the cracks of Doom, destroyed the One Ring, and Mordor fell. Sauron's power was utterly crippled, sending shockwaves through the air and the ground. The Dark Tower of Barad-dûr, the Black Gate, and the Towers of the Teeth collapsed into decimation. Mount Doom erupted, and both Sauron and his ringmates were destroyed. The shadows dissipated, and Aragorn, to a lesser, led a campaign to destroy the one remaining orc holds within Mordor. Now let's go over its armies and basic units. Mordor had vast armies at its disposal, all filled with a fierce hatred of the men in the west and the elves. While the orcs in the land may not have been the most powerful warriors, they were very fierce and could be quite overwhelming in numbers. Other units like Trolls and allies like the Haradrim and Easterlings were also gathered into Mordor prior to the launch of the Dark Lord's final war. The backbone and most numbered part of Sauron's army were the orcs. They often used poisoned or fiery arrows to attack their opponents, though neither the soldiers themselves nor the weapons reached the quality of the free peoples. They were still quite deadly and could swarm over their enemies thanks to their large numbers. They also did not fight fair and used whatever strategy, or no strategy, in order to win. Mordor had powerful allies to aid in Sauron's quest for domination. The Easterlings were a more advanced race than the Orcs, who used deadly swords and pikes. They had finer qualities, weapons and armor, as well as better trained soldiers. In a sense, they were more of an elite infantry of Mordor. The Haradrim used bows, far superior to orc bows, and they could deal some heavy damage to enemy units, even ones on horseback. The Haradrim also had Mumakil, otherwise known as Oliphants, a huge elephant-like beast which were like a walking tower which could deal huge damage and decimate armies. The other allies were the Varings of Khand and the Corsairs of Umbar, who had the longest history war with Gondor, and were one of its main, if not its main, enemies in all of Middle-earth. Well, my servants, and slaves of darkness, heralds of disorder, and cracks of doom, I hope you enjoyed this installment. We have just dispatched our researchers to discover more information. I am trying to upload 1 to 2 videos per week. However, I am currently handling 5 YouTube channels. That's right, 5 YouTube channels, and it is proving very stressful. So, excuse my upload schedule. If you're not already yet, please subscribe, hit the like button, and be sure to prepare for the next video. Now, let's venture out into the Mordor where the shadows lie.